Hello and welcome again to another episode from Lifecycle 360. I'm Denise, and if you're tuning in for the first time, this is actually going to be our second of so much more chats with persons who are involved in the emergency medical services. In today's episode, I have with me Mr. CLayton Thomas. And CLayton is a medical dispatcher and has been working there for a number of years. I've known CLayton for a while. Seems like everybody I bring on to this little chat session, I know them a long time. But I'm glad to have CLayton here, and I like to always let persons who are here introduce themselves, and you can just let everybody know who you are, a little bit about your background, and we can get started with some questions I have for you today.
All right, nice. Glad to be here with you. And please don't distance yourself. You're
Okay.
part of the field as well. So
well, yes,
it's only obvious that you know us.
Yes. That is true. I'll take that back.
Yes, I'll throw you into the mix and tell the people that you were my teacher. As far back as 2011.
Right.
So you've been in the business for a while.
Right. I have been.
I joined the profession in 2011 with you being one of my teachers. And I've been in the EMS practice since then. In 2015, I came off of the truck and went into dispatching. And since then, I've been a medical dispatcher. About myself personally, I'm married, 2 children. I'm from the beautiful Sister Isle of Tobago. So for those who following the trends, hashtag my Tobago face.
What is that?
Follow social media, you'd see it.
I need to get more involved in this social media business. Yes, but go ahead.
All right. So yeah, and that's about it. Then basic. I love what I do. This EMS field is very diverse and dynamic.
Right.
And for those who out of school, out of a job, looking for something that is very challenging, could bring out your charisma, could bring out the sensitive side in you. Check us out. This is the field to be in.
Yeah, I would also add meaningful to that, because every day you go out to work, you do make a difference in somebody's lives.
That's so true, so true.
Yeah.
How could I miss that?
Yes. So good to have you here, and thanks for taking time to share with us what your experiences have been like, especially within the beginning of this year. Things have turned up dramatically when it comes to our COVID situation in Trinidad. And I spoke to Andy about what it's like for him being on an ambulance and, the challenges he has. But with you, I have to take a little different approach, because as a medical dispatcher, you are really not on an ambulance per se, but you sit in a room, I guess, with 3, 4, 5 of you all that work as a team, that you're like the brain box of being able to send persons X or Y. Now I just kind of give you a quick overview, but can you tell me what is the role of a dispatcher? How does the medical dispatch system, how does that work? Let's say somebody calls 811, what happens after that?
All right, I can answer it 2 ways. I can answer in a short version or a long version.
You pick which one, yeah.
Let's start with the short one.
All right.
In a capsule, the role of the EMS dispatcher is to basically efficiently manage the ambulance service from behind a telephone and a computer screen.
Right.
That's it. That's the short version.
Right.
But in that short version, when you expound on it, there's so much more than just answering a phone and monitoring a computer screen.
Right.
Right. You're required to basically answer the 811 calls, answer all the distress calls. You have to manage all the shifts that are on duty at day and putting them into the system so that they could be adequately made available for responding to calls. You have to position them across the country, right? What we call posting. So you manage the what we call the SSP, the system status, right?
Right.
You and when you have them posted across the country, you then manage the response of the ambulances.
What does
When a call
posting
comes through
mean?
within,
If I could just ask you, for somebody who's looking on, what does posting mean for a team in an ambulance?
All right, so sometimes persons would be roving about the country and they would see an ambulance parked on the side of the road, probably in some strategic location.
Right.
They are doing what we call posting. They are standby in a ready status or in case a call were to come up in that area or to come up at any location.
Right.
They are in a ready status.
Right.
To receive a call.
Okay.
So that's the main basis for posting.
Right.
And that's just some of the functions of the dispatcher or the dispatch team.
Right. And I guess when somebody calls, you all will say where the nearest ambulance is. You would send them. And is it based on severity of what the emergency is? How does that work? Does it get priority for things that are more severe compared to things that may not be? How do you choose who goes where?
Yes. The calls go through what we call a triage system.
Right.
Simply meaning they are prioritized.
Okay.
So if someone were to be having a heart attack and their relative were to call and someone else stumped their toe and their relative were to call, you could tell which one will get the response first.
Right.
Right? So it's like that. The calls come through, we receive all the calls. You go through a series of questions, and from the responses to the questions, we then prioritize the calls, going from priority 1 through 6. So there are 6 basic priorities that we categorize the calls in.
Wow, so it seems like
the first three categories are of the highest priority.
Yeah, and I think that's something that the public may not be aware of, where they think that when the ambulance is called, no matter what it is, like they need to get immediate service. Now, I know that is the main goal of an EMS service, but if you're limited with what your resources you have, with the amounts of ambulances you may have at that time, it may be delayed. Is that so?
Yes, that is so true. There are certain perceptions, 2 main perceptions that the public has, that as we have the opportunity to probably debunk them.
Right.
One is that when they call, an ambulance would be at their doorsteps almost immediately. That is something that we hope to achieve, but until such time, let's deal with the reality. It won't always happen.
Right.
We could try to get there within minutes, depends on where they're coming from, the availability of ambulances. Then that would determine the time with the response. Another perception that persons have is that once they use an ambulance, as soon as they get to the hospital, they'll be seen.
Right, that's another myth, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That's something that we have no control of on the ambulance. What we have control of is receiving your call and responding to your distress call. When the ambulance takes you to the hospital, you're now the sole responsibility of hospital, the receiving hospital. Right? So they would then do their own triage system and determine whether you could be seen immediately or referred to another facility or however they choose to treat with you.
Yeah, it seems like we debunking all these myths about what happens when an ambulance is initiated for a call and actually what takes place when you get to the hospital. And those are 2 good points. And I think it's important as we talk about it that people who listen on and looking on here, take note about that, because it's not always where you get seen immediately because you arrived in an ambulance, right?
That's true. And as we're on the topic, as we're on that topic, another common myth that we could debunk is that the ambulance is coming from the hospital right next door. That is not always the case.
Okay.
Many times persons would pass and they would see ambulances parked at their district hospital or their regional hospital, and they are of the opinion that those are the ambulances that respond to their distress call. It's not always that way.
Right.
There are different ambulances. Some of these ambulances belong to the regional health authorities, and we have no control over those.
Right.
Those are responsible for inter-facility transfers.
Right.
They don't respond to calls at people's homes.
That brings me to my next question for you, because you already started explaining the interfacility transportation between the regional facilities. So we have like the Southwest Regional Health Authority, the Eastern Regional Health Authority, and so on. And each one of these, they have assigned ambulances, and they are the ones that may transport patients with a nurse in the back, if I'm not mistaken, to another facility. That is different than dealing with emergency medical services type call. And what I want to ask you now is, what is the difference between what your ambulance, what you dispatch, and what the fire services, their ambulances, and what they are? Do all the two dispatchers, do they work together? Is it a separate thing? And what's the main difference from your point of view?
All right, so for the National Ambulance Service, where I have the privilege of working, they are mandated by the Ministry of Health to respond to the emergency calls nationally. Right. So across Trinidad, what we used to know as EHS, or now GMRTT, they are mandated by the Ministry of Health to respond to all emergency calls across the country, whether it's an accident, a call at a home, a call at a business place, or wherever. The fire service, they are basically an auxiliary service.
Okay.
All right. So yes, persons could call fire service, and if they are able to help, they would send an ambulance to your location.
Right.
In our case, if you call 811, you'll get a GMRTT ambulance responding to you. If you were to call 990, you'd get the fire service upon their availability. Right? Because they have some EMTs as firemen. Right? Within the fire service, they have EMTs as firemen.
So they cross-trained.
If they have, repeat?
They would be cross-trained.
Yes, they are cross-trained. That's correct. But sometimes they don't have an EMT on shift. So they'd basically just be rendering transport. On the contrary, if you get an ambulance from GMRTT, you're getting medically trained persons with all the equipment necessary to treat with your case until you get to the hospital. Right.
That's another really good point to note, because I think before EHS GMR was around, the public would rely on that 990 number and the fire services to be able to do emergency care or whatever they could have been doing back in that time.
That would have been emergency transport.
Transport, not care, right. Emergency transport. Okay, good. And that's, thanks for setting that straight. CLayton, as I was talking to Andy before, what are some of the challenges that you as a dispatcher, obviously the calls I'm sure has increased dramatically because of the rise in COVID patients and the need for emergency care where that is concerned. How do you as a dispatcher, what are some of the challenges that you experience and how do you all go about as a team? Because in the dispatch center on a particular shift, how much of you all are there to deal with the dispatching itself?
Well, that's a compound question, but...
Yes, being hard questions today.
All right, let me take it from the last part of the question going forward.
Right.
So at the dispatch center, let me break it down. The dispatch center is a multi-facilitated center.
Okay.
To simply break it down into 3 categories in the center. The supervisor, who monitors everything that goes on.
Right.
You have another category of the dispatcher, and then we have the call takers.
Okay.
On the center is staffed with 7 persons.
Oh, 7. Okay. Right. That's good.
A fully staffed 7 persons. You'd have 2 persons responsible for the actual dispatching. Well, it's actually 1 person, but you have a backup. Right. So the assistant dispatcher is a backup to the dispatcher.
Okay.
Right? The dispatcher has the sole responsibility of all those responsibilities I mentioned earlier, posting the trucks, initiating the responses to the calls, monitoring the ambulance whilst they're en route, to make sure that they're not getting lost or they're not going in the wrong direction.
Right.
Then we have the assistant, who, by virtue of the name, is an assistant to the dispatcher. They would answer the radio. So there's a 2-phase communication system.
Right.
The main wireless handheld radios or the onboard radios in the ambulances.
Right.
Then there's a digital phone communication called earchat. So it's like you turn your cell phone into a walkie-talkie.
Right. Okay. I know there's apps for that now you could use to get like that kind of effect. Right. Cool.
Nice. Cool. Good. So the company has bought into one of the apps, and they use that for communication.
Right.
So the crews, depending on where they are, so they could manipulate. They don't just have one form of communication. They have multiple lines of communication.
Right. Okay.
So at no point in time you're supposed to lose communication. Right. So if you're having problems with the radio, you could switch to the cell phone. Most places in Trinidad have good cell phone coverage on the 2 networks.
Right.
Right. So the assistant dispatcher would assist in monitoring the cell phone part of the communications.
Okay.
That'll be earchat.
Right.
And if the dispatcher were to miss something from the main radio walkie-talkie, they are there as a backup to make sure that nothing is missed.
Okay.
Because in a communication center, communication is key. You don't want to miss anything at all.
Right.
Whether on the receiving end or the delivery end.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Good.
And then the 3rd category would be the call takers. Those are the persons that you hear when you dial the 811. Those are the persons that answer your call.
Right.
They would ask you a series of questions and take all the information, take the direction to find you, and we as the dispatchers would initiate the response.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So what are the challenges you've been experiencing since the year has begun with the increase in calls for COVID patients?
But before I answer that, let me address one challenge that is an old challenge.
Right.
The challenge of being able to reassure caller that the ambulance is going to respond to you. Most times, persons, when they're calling, they're anxious.
Right.
And it's difficult to understand that we have a process to go through in terms of generating your response. We need to confirm your address. So not because you see on television that a 911 call goes through.
And immediately the ambulance comes up. Immediately.
The ambulance just shows up, right? Yeah. They don't show the part where they seek the directions and
right. Yeah.
We in Trinidad have advanced in technology, But
Yes.
however, we don't have some of the technology, or we don't use some of the technology that is available in some of the developed worlds,
Right.
developed countries, right? So call tracing to match your location. We don't use that in Trinidad and Tobago. In
Right.
some of the developed countries, they have that technology. So even if the call gets disconnected, they could still get a location, right?
Right.
So that's one of the challenges.
Right. And that has been like that for a little while,
yes,
forever kind of way. Because you always want, especially if something is happening to you in front of you, there's a panic that starts to take place, and you know, they start to scream and shout at the person on the phone. And
well, fortunately, we've been trained to deal with the anxious caller.
Right.
Right. We're thankful for the training that we receive. Another challenge is well, let me talk about me personally.
Okay.
I
want you to be very neutral as possible. This is just for information's sake.
I'm gonna talk about the calls that challenge me.
Right. Okay. Give me one, because I have a couple more questions I have to deal with you where I want to find out some more things. So give me one call that challenged you.
All right. The call that challenges me is the mentally ill call for the mentally ill patient, a psych patient. All right. I have a passion for humanity. And to understand fully the mentally challenged patient takes a whole lot out of you. And sometimes you receive a call from the patient themselves. I could remember clearly I received a call from a young man.
Right.
Wanting to harm himself. And he just wanted someone to talk to at the other end of the phone.
Right.
And I had to stay on the line and talk to that young man until the ambulance got there. Thankfully, he didn't get the opportunity to harm himself.
Yeah.
Right? So that's one of the calls, or the type of calls that challenges me.
Right.
You brought into the mix the challenge with the increase in call volume due to COVID-19.
Right.
That's another challenge by itself. We have already been stressed or stretched by the volume of medical calls across the country. And now with this pandemic, we've been thrown into the mix of responding to the COVID calls.
Now, the thing is, Clayton, let me interrupt you. Just wanted to say one thing, because with the COVID calls, you spoke about in the beginning where there's a triage being taking place when that call it comes into the dispatch center. Now, COVID patients pretty much are may be presenting a lot of the times with difficulty breathing. That is something that may stand out and push that person ahead of somebody who, as you say, stumped their toe. How do you deal with that? Plus, let's say you have somebody who is, they're probably at the point of where they think that they are ready for delivery and they need an ambulance. How do you juggle that?
Well, those two categories are both high priority calls.
Right.
And they will be treated with the same priority. Okay. Difficulty breathing or pregnancy would receive the same, delivery, being an imminent delivery. Would be treated with the same sense of urgency for both cases, right?
Right. So one is not going to be prioritized over the other.
No, those two calls would come in as high priority calls
Right, got you. Good,
and
good.
be treated as such.
Right. Because it's important that people know out there, that there are other calls beside the COVID calls happening now. And these people, they need the same priority that a COVID patient might need. But right now, it's being where the COVID calls are kind of outweighing. If I don't know, I'm asking, is it like they're outweighing where the number of calls coming in is maybe a 70 to 30% of other medical emergencies compared to the COVID?
I would not say it's out. The COVID calls are outweighing the normal medical calls, but the challenge with the COVID calls is that the turnover time with the COVID calls is greater.
Right.
Because of decontamination, receiving facilities,
Right.
is a more drawn out process.
Right.
Whereas with a normal medical call, you take up your patient, you go to the receiving hospital, and you hand over, and you hope that they're able to receive the patient immediately, and you're on your way for another call. It's not always like that, but it's a more fluid process with the ordinary medical calls.
Yeah, I would think so, because there's so much to take in consideration. Where do you send this person? Where does this person go if they're COVID positive? If they have room on the facility that's closest, if they have to send them further, and is it like that?
Well, with the COVID calls, the Ministry of Health is working in the background with dealing with the COVID patients. Sorry.
Right.
So the receiving facility is prearranged.
Right. Okay.
Right. So once you a little insight into the background. All COVID patients are in a database with the Ministry of Health, right, through the CMO for the district.
Is it
right?
all, or is it supposed to be all?
All is sent to the CMO.
Okay.
So once you're tested and all your results go to the Ministry of Health. So those reports that you get daily are accumulated from the testing sites across the country.
Okay.
Right? And so your name is in the system.
Okay.
If you weren't, sometimes you're contacted by Ministry of Health and they do an evaluation on you, ask you about your symptoms, how you're feeling, and depending on your response, they would contact us to generate a response to send the X person, or you may call for yourself, stating that I was tested on X date, got a positive result, I'm now experiencing chest pain, I'm experiencing difficulty breathing, nausea, whatever the symptoms may be.
Right.
We would receive the call and we would verify the information with Ministry of Health.
Okay.
In the meantime, generating a response. The ambulance would come to your home.
Right.
The crew would put on the necessary PPE. They would evaluate you on scene.
Right.
We give the information about your condition back to Ministry of Health. They would then organize a receiving facility for you, make bed space available for you.
But how long does that whole process take?
Well, sometimes this could take from 30 minutes to 2 hours.
Okay.
It depends. It depends.
Right.
So there's no hard and fast. There's no hard and fast time frame. That's why I said the COVID calls they take a longer time, because you have all of that going on in the background. All you see is the ambulance come to your location and they take your vitals.
That's true. Yeah.
You see them sitting around waiting, but this is all that is going on in the background.
Yeah.
Right, to make sure that the patient is well received.
Yeah, and I mean it's important to make this where we can let people know what really happens in the background, and for more understanding to take place. And I guess that's the whole point of doing these videos such as this. And I mean, like, I'm learning as well, because I'm in the private sector, and the private sector, it's so different when it comes to dealing with patients compared to dealing in the general public. So I'm learning as well. So I really enjoying this chat. One last thing I'll ask you. Who would be a mutual aid in any way for, let's say that there's a high priority call? Is it that GMR would contact another ambulance service to assist, or is it that they would just have to wait until there's an availability for another ambulance to be able to respond to the call? Do you all have any mutual aids?
Well, we do have mutual aids.
Okay.
Earlier you made reference to fire service.
Right.
Fire service is a mutual aid. And a lot of the calls that we respond to, we have mutual aids.
Okay.
So let's talk about the calls that reach home to me the most, the psychiatric calls, the psychiatric patients. Our mutual aid in that call is the police.
Right.
So some of these persons may want to cause harm to themselves, cause harm to others. They may be wielding weapons.
Right.
So our mutual aid in that call would be the police.
Right.
On a scene of an accident. In addition to the police being a mutual aid, fire service is a mutual aid. Right? Because we may need them for extrication. Right?
Yeah.
So we do have mutual aids. In terms of the medical calls, fire service is our mutual aid. We sometimes respond to calls at locations where we have challenges with terrain, and we would use fire service for search and rescue, their search and rescue team to assist us in moving the patients. So we do have mutual aids.
So it is, everybody works together for the benefit of
everybody works together for the benefit of all.
Right, that's great, man. It sounds really good because you can't function by yourself. We all need each other, and we need to, the more we understand every role, it's better that we could work together and not take each other for granted. So
correct. No man is an island.
Exactly, you know, and I just want to say, I have no more questions for you. That's it there. I really appreciate this conversation, CLayton, because you brought a lot of understanding and enlightenment to the medical dispatching field. And I know when I used to work EHS, I myself used to work in the medical dispatch center, but I know it's changed tremendously, I'm sure, improved, you know, and I totally understand what it's like when you have to figure out who goes where and who doesn't go where, and, you know, but it's probably so much more of a challenge when it comes with the COVID-19 patients now added to that mix. So I really appreciate this chat, man. And for all those who are looking on, we want to say thanks for taking the time. And we're trying to make this, I wouldn't say weekly, but as soon as we can get more CLaytons and Andys and anybody who's interested in having a chat, that you could help people out there, the general public, to get to know what it is like as a frontline worker in the emergency medical services. Just leave a comment below. Let us know what you thought about the video, and stay tuned. I'll try my best to get somebody else as another sit-down chat. The only thing we're missing now, right, is a little coffee or something for Starbucks.
I actually left my cup outside.
Yeah. So thanks again, CLayton, and thank you for viewing, and stay tuned for the next video coming up. And take care, guys, and stay safe.
Thank you.
All right, bye.